Hey guys, Peter here to talk about the debut record from Cult of the Sun, We Are the Dragon, out May 7th on Napalm Records. This album has 12 tracks, 41 minutes in length, and they are a Finnish goth rock band. Now, the structure of this album is one that doesn't impact the record one way or another. It doesn't make the record more fluid, it doesn't make the record more dynamic, but it also doesn't make the record worse than what it really is. It's just kind of there. It doesn't have a necessarily direct impact into the fluidity and into the overall playability of the album. It's one of those that you could listen to the record from the first to the last song, from the last song to the first song. You could listen to it on shuffle. I think you're going to get exactly the same thing out of this record, regardless of how you approach it. And that is because the structure doesn't really make the album move one way or another. Once you get into the soundscape of the record, you're going to get different looks, different feels, but still all under that goth rock umbrella. But some songs are definitely more rock, some are more goth, some have more electronic elements into them, some have a lot of pop hooks in terms of how they're constructed and how they're delivered. And the soundscape changes ever so slightly from song to song. It's not really uniform across all 12 tracks. This is not one of those albums that the sound experience that you get in the first song is exactly the same sound experience that you're going to get all the way through. There is some slight variations from track to track, which helps the fluidity of the album, but it doesn't have necessarily a deep impact in the overall motion that this record has. Now, within that soundscape, there are a couple of pillars that really define the overall essence of the album. And I would go with the electronic elements and the guitars as the two main pillars of this record as far as the sound is concerned. On the electronic side, I like the fact that you're going to get them and you're not going to really see an abuse of keyboards or electronic elements throughout the album. They're going to be there on certain songs, they're going to disappear in others, but the times that they're there, they really have a deep impact in how you perceive the tracks and how you feel the songs and how they're constructed and obviously in how they are delivered. When they're not there, you don't really miss it, and you're actually glad that they're not there so that the album doesn't become a little bit repetitive from that perception. So I like the overall use of these elements. I like the fact that they have a deep impact when they're there, but when they're not there, you kind of forget about them and you concentrate on other elements that are really pushing the songs forward. One of those elements being the guitars. I felt like they were really the igniter of this record. The tracks go where the guitars are going. The motion that the songs have are also deeply connected to how the guitars sound and how they are approached within the tracks themselves. Sometimes the guitars are a little bit more driven, sometimes a little bit more melodic, sometimes a little bit more crunchy, sometimes having a little bit more volume, sometimes less, but they really dictate the life and the strength of the individual songs and how you move along within the tracks and obviously the fluidity that the album puts forward as far as the whole is concerned. Once you get into the vocals, it's pretty uniform from the first track all the way to the last. What you're going to get in the first song is pretty much what you're going to get all the way through. There's not a lot of changes. There's no changes almost at all or no variations that you can really point your finger at. There's some backing vocals on a few tracks, specifically in the chorus, that I really felt that it added volume, it added depth, it made the songs feel a little bit stronger, definitely made the songs hookier and a little bit catchier. So I like that use of backing vocals on a few tracks, but just like the electronic elements, it's not like you're going to get them on every single song. So you enjoy them when they're there and you're kind of glad that they're not there all the time because it would make the album feel a little bit repetitive. You would know exactly what's coming around the corner and that's not necessarily a good thing. But from an overall vocal perspective, it's very streamlined, very linear, very flat line all the way across 12 tracks, and that brings the whole record together and it gives the album a sense of balance, a sense of being very uniform and not really breaking apart throughout the overall experience. Now, when you look at this album from the big picture, this is a record that feels like it's not going anywhere, that all the elements are kind of stagnant, they're just holding themselves there, but they're not really pushing you one way or another. When you look at the individual songs, you have a different perception of the record. The songs sometimes feel like they have a lot of impact, they have a lot of motion, they have a lot of fluidity. Obviously, some tracks are a little bit more melancholic, so they feel like they're treading water. But overall, the record really gives you a sense of just not moving, that it doesn't have movement, that it doesn't have life, and because of that, it feels a little bit like it becomes an overburden, if you will, as far as the listener is concerned and how you perceive this album moving from one song to the next and to the next. So while the record only has 41 minutes, by the end of the album, I felt like this album had 82 minutes. It felt like it had doubled the length, just because it took me a long time to digest each song and then to really move to the next track, because the album itself doesn't help you move from song to song. You have to do all of that on your own. all the work is on your back as far as this record is concerned. So you really have to take the time to listen to it. You really have to take the time to navigate through it. And there's nothing really helping you on this journey. And because of that, the 41 minutes in length feel much longer, and the album starts to feel a little bit like it's stretched out. I think for a record of this nature, of this soundscape, of this construction, it needed to be a little bit shorter so it'd have a much quicker impact, and the listener wouldn't feel like he's walking through a forest completely lost with no end in sight. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Dancing with the Devil, an electronic driven soundscape as far as this song is concerned. It moves slowly, it has a slow burning aspect to it, it's very methodic. The vocals feel very linear and consistent, which is the case pretty much with every single track from the beginning all the way to the end. The atmosphere that comes to the forefront is really driven by the keys and all the electronic elements that permeate throughout the track. They're definitely there. They play a huge impact on how you perceive the song, on how this song sounds, and how this song comes across. It's more melodic in the chorus. There's a slight variation as you move from the verses into the chorus. The chorus has a little bit more melody, and it offers a little bit more energy to the track, making the song feel perhaps a little bit more robust overall. But it's definitely a song that divides verses and chorus, and it transitions you from one into the other, feeling like you're reaching that climax once you get into the chorus. I like the approach, I like how this song is together, but I really enjoy the electronic elements and the keyboards and how much sound, how much depth it provided to the overall track. Twilight is the next song. This is my favorite on the record. I love this track. It has great tempo. It almost feels upbeat, which is something that you're not necessarily going to get throughout this album, because from a sound perspective, from a lyrical perspective, and definitely from how the vocals are coming at you, this album feels very dark. It has a dark nature to it. But this song, for the way it's put together, the way it sounds, it just feels a little bit more upbeat than the rest of the record. I like the bass on this song. The bass really jumps into the forefront, specifically in the verses. The verses really feel stripped down, has this classic rock, pure rock and roll approach in terms of how it's constructed, in terms of how it is delivered. Very stripped down, very raw. And then you move into the chorus, becoming a little bit more melodic, gaining a little bit more volume musically and vocally. The backing vocals really help from that perspective, because the song sounds like it's growing on a sonic side, and the vocals, by adding the backing vocals to it, really feel like they're matching that intensity and that growth. So it becomes really noticeable as you move from the verses into the chorus in terms of the difference between the two. This is a song that has a peak and a valley, and the two are very well separated from one another. The transitions are smooth, but you can totally tell when you're in one and when you're in the next. I like that dynamic approach. I wish the whole record had more of this. This track is really interesting. It just moves really well. Very engaging song all around. Last but not least, Whore of Babylon, a track that has ebbs and flows, but not really incredible ebbs and flows. It just has a nice movement. It has speed bumps along the way, if you will. It has some crescendos, it has some peaks, some valleys. You feel a sense of growth coming in from the verses into the chorus. The verses always feels like it's growing or it's building towards something, and that something is definitely the chorus. The chorus becomes a little bit bigger, a little bit hookier, not too big, but it definitely has a little bit more depth. It definitely has a little bit more sound. The overall guitar sound is really what drives this song. It's really what pushes it forward, and it matches well with the drums. A track that I really felt that guitars and drums together with the vocals, all three pulling in the same direction, allowing the song to have a little bit more substance, to not feel as drained out, to feel like it had a little bit more for the listener to appreciate, and it really moved the track well. It really created a sense of movement from the beginning to the end, even though it's not a fast moving track. It's more of a mid-tempo track, but it still has some movement to it, and that allows this song to be a little bit better overall, because it adds playability to how you perceive this track. This is it, Cult of the Sun, We Are the Dragon debut record out May 7th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.